Okay, here's the head that River Joe, he schmelted the copper. I don't know what it's called. It's he melted it down. And thank you, man. This is awesome. I've been out here. I got a railroad spike wedged into this old split hackberry log, and it actually split more as I pounded down, obviously, but this is the progress. I noticed on some of the pictures of the original axe head that there was a flare. It almost had a kind of an I-beam profile to it. So I went for that. I didn't want to remove a lot of copper, so I had like cutting here, flaring it out and things like that. So I'm just going to pound this into shape. And the reason being, it's actually easier since I don't really have a way to cut the material. I tried the hacksaw, I tried the Dremel tool, a couple little test spots just to see. And as much as this is known for being a soft material, I noticed that once you pound it, it actually gets a really decent hardness to it. Now, I know nothing about metalworks, blacksmithing, any of that stuff. So as I'm going along here, I'm constantly learning little things. I mean, on a small scale of what I'm doing here. I'm personally learning a lot of stuff. Now, what I'm hopefully going to do here is I'm going to flare this out a little more, and then I'm also going to bring this down. So what I'm doing is, I guess I'm elongating the head a little bit, and then once I do get to the final finishing and stuff, and I got some abrader stones, different. I'm going to do as much as I can traditionally, and primitive style as I can. I am using an Estwing hammer, but I noticed that a simple round cobble, or a broken, in this case a broken cobble, works pretty good. So this isn't as big of a hump on this side, so I'm going to flare that out a little bit with a rock just to show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully. Okay, you can see that hump is lessened by quite a bit just from that little session. And what it did is flared or mushroomed this out quite a bit. Now, another reason I did not want to just take this to the grinder at work and shape it, I wanted to leave some of that awesome that topography, as River Joe mentioned, on this thing. I want to try to save this whole section of that as much as I possibly can, and that actually had a little bit of a concave to it anyways. So anyways, just wanted to get a little videotape of the progress. I'm going to pound this down, mushroom it out a little bit, and then I think I'm on the way to where I'm going to have a sharpenable head here. Another thing, this is larger. The head, the axe head, was probably about that long, I believe. So, yeah, and it was probably the size of two of these. This is a very small file, so it's probably only about that big. Anyways, I don't really have anything for reference. Again, this is a small file. But I'm gonna work on this side and flatten it down. I'm gonna bring this taper down a little bit on this side, and this is awesome. So I'm gonna check that I'm recording here. Okay, I'm just gonna start shaping on this this slight rise here, and then this slight rise here. I'm going to do a little more work with the hammerstone right here. So you can see that's a point. I'm gonna mushroom that out, flare it down a little more. Alright, so that brought a mushroom lip over on both sides, and it brought down that taper to the tail. Originally this was the sharp end that out of the mold, and I flipped it around just because I think it made for less work, and plus I wanted to leave a lot of or more material here in case I completely messed up sharpening it, or it got to the testing stage and it was softer, so I'd have to reshape it possibly and do some sort of a heat treatment or whatever on the end. But from right now, it's just pounding. I'm gonna bring this slight hump down a little further. This was all done with a rock just a few minutes ago. And you could tell because it does leave a little bit of material on there. This is basalt. So got that mushroom down, tapered, and I'm gonna go back to the top. Actually no, I'm gonna get this hump out here. There's a slight hump. I'll do a little with the rock again, and then I'm probably gonna go to the hammer because I could make a little more progress with the hammer. I'm rolling it kind of like that and trying to keep it solid on there. And you know when it's not solid on there, you can really feel it in your hand. So, and I'm not pounding. I'm sure I could bash this out in a few minutes with a huge hammer, but I'm just tapping it. The light, it's like with a I hate to bring it up, but it's like with a tracker knife. If you lay back with it, it's more productive. If you try to slice through a Coke can size hackberry, it's going to bounce off pretty much. But if you tap cut, same here, it's more progress. So with a knife or a small hatchet or an axe, you can just tap out smaller pieces, slivers, potato chips or whatever, and get a lot of progress. But so back to this. That hump. So what brought this up? I was thinking, what would they use to hammer this if they had copper and they didn't have steel? So it had to have been either rocks or other pieces of copper, or they would just get it so close to the rough shape out of the mold that it was very light shaping. Okay, back to the hump. I started rambling there, but again, use a little bit with a rock, then I'll hopefully finish off with the hammer. So that hump is almost out. Actually, I might leave a little bit of that there. I want to have a little bit of a wave in here, and then a wave down, wave down. Another thing, just an observation that is brilliant of these people, was once the stock was pounded down on the edges, I'm sure that's making this stronger, plus it's giving it like an I-beam kind of construction, which is known to be pretty strong. But the other thing is that I noticed, when you pound these edges down like that, it makes almost like you would find in a fulsome type point, which is that fluted area, this concave area. It's not as predominant on this side. Listen to me with my big words. It's not as predominant on this side, but these little peens in here, I'm going to tap that out, and once I get this about to the thickness, I'm going to really let go on this side and try to bash that over and get that that I-beam all the way from the base to the bit, or the pole to the bit, or whatever you want to call it. And also I'm going to flatten this out by hammering. I'm going to do some on this face. So that smoothed it down, brought it down a little bit. On the anvils, thoughts on that? I've been taking notes on the bear hat, and pretty much everything I'm doing, I'm going to start trying to take notes. I haven't written anything by hand in a long time, so it's going to be hard to read my writing when I go back to it and possibly type it out. But the neat thing, well, I forgot where I was going with that, because I just saw I knocked a little chip off, which is fine, because that was one of the mushroomed, or the little nugget areas that I pounded down. So this probably got real thin, and as a matter of fact, the original has almost identical chip down here in the tail area. So that's kind of cool to see that, how it happened, and know that it wasn't because he was attacked by 3 armies or some weird conspiracy theory. It's just like right there in front of me, and you know, it's not just dumped into the, oh, it was a bad mold or whatever. It's because I thinned it out when I mushroomed it out, and then I chipped it. So yeah, that's where I used the little grinder, the Dremel, to see how much progress and how fast I can make it. Anyways, back to this. I'm gonna really let go onto this hump and thin it, and then I'm gonna go back to the flare. So that really flared out there and got a little bit on this side too, so that's more than what I was going for. I'm gonna finish a little bit in there. Okay. Wow. This is amazing. I'm gonna shut it down. Okay. I'm back. I'm gonna call it good on this end for now until I start doing some shape shaping. I'm gonna get in here a little bit. Alright. That's looking good. This side needs a little work, so I'm going to start on that. As I look down, it's pretty symmetrical. Other than that little side here, the pole or the butt's going to be rounded to fit into the notch. So that's basically it right there. So I'm going to have to remember to keep this a little wider, or close as I can, so it fits. About that much of the blade's going to be sticking out. Maybe more if I decide to elongate it. But I'm going to work on the bit now. I learned a long time ago from a great tool use documentary. Tool Time was the name. There was a gentleman that lived across the fence, very handy fellow. Always shared his genius with his friend Tim, and he once said, and I'm sure the origins of this were from one of the early woodcraft books, but said, "You know how to build a dugout canoe, Tim?" And he says, "Well, how do you do that?" He goes, "Well, you get a log and then you cut away all the parts that aren't a canoe." So with this, you get a nugget of copper and then you squish in all the parts that aren't a copper axe. So I'm learning a ton, seriously, doing this, and getting real close to bringing this down and getting some sort of an edge on it. It's heavy. I'll weigh it later, I guess, if I could find a scale. Okay, it's getting there. This is, again, there was some little knots that are little orbs, and when I pounded them flat, so I got some little copper action there. when I pounded them flat from the top once they mushroom out, and that's what's left of them from pounding it. So I guess I don't want to do too much of that. I want to leave as much of that look as I can. I might use like a wire brush on it, but I got some more to go. I'm going to leave it at this, take some pictures of the progress, and get back with you later. Thank you very much for watching. River Joe, thanks for the nugget of joy right here. This is awesome. Somewhere on here I'll put your mark if you want, because if you wouldn't have sent this, I wouldn't be sitting out here today making this. So that goes for a few other fellas, and I truly appreciate the support on this. All right, later.